Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to TTRPG, our March episode. Um, Excited to be hanging out here with Nikki today. How was your weekend?
Busy. I ran tech for the Women of D&D's whole shebang yesterday. Well, two of the things. There was four games, and I ran tech for two of them, and they were here on our channel. And so we had Momo was running Guys in Chairs, and that was so fun to watch. And then after that, we had Riley was running Honey Heist, and that was so wild. If you didn't watch it, you gotta watch the VOD. There was a friggin' pun counter.
Oh, I was
There was a
watching that
leftist
earlier.
revolt
Yeah.
against Big Honey. Like, it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out
And
because it was
everybody was all cute, like dressed up like bears.
yes. Oh my God. Yes. As per usual, Jay was very extra. Riley wore a whole bear kirigami. It was so cute. Shook her little tail for us when we hit $1,000.
Nice.
So, but what was funny is you could see it on the Zoom call, but not on the actual like overlay. So all the
Yeah.
cast got to see Riley's little like bear tail, but like the audience didn't. But it was still really fun. But anyway, what's in your cup?
I am drinking caramel apple dream. I think it's a Christmas tea, but I'm trying to make it work.
Caramel apples are good all year round. I'm drinking the inflammation rescue because I found that it does help a little bit when I am having a fibromyalgia flare up. Do I like the flavor? Not as much, but it does work, and sometimes medicine doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to bring on our first guest?
Yeah, first we have Natalie Putin from Charm Person Games, professional game master, tabletop content creator, and author of Sapphic Space Pirates. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi, Reese.
Oh.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's very good to have you here. I'm glad to be able to meet you today. Tell us about how you came up with the name for your company, Charm Person Games.
So we are actually out of Baltimore, Maryland, is where we're headquartered, which Baltimore, Maryland is Charm City. If you know, we're very
Oh,
proud of our nickname of being Charm City. I do stuff with the Charm City roller derby and all of that. And so when we started, we were much more D&D focused. Of course, now,
right.
like a lot of different companies, we've diversified to other games,
Mhm.
but we just loved the D&D spell, like going from there to Charm Person.
Yeah, that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite spells too.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to know about
Uh-huh.
this name. So, what was your favorite part of streaming Sapphic Space Pirates here on TTRPG?
Honestly, I just love seeing people play the game. Like, it's such an odd feeling, like getting to see people interact with and play your game for the first time. And Dana was absolutely amazing to play with. I met Dana, and if you're watching my other streams, you'll be able to see Dana next week over on Carrying Comfort Studios, starting her role as Yaziva for Yaziva's Bed and Breakfast actual play.
Oh wow, I'm going to
So
be on that too.
yes, Nikki is going to be guest starring as the Candle Princess. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I play Gertrude and then the concierge for that show. But yeah, I got to meet a lot of great people through that show, and just getting to see new people interact with my game is always a weird moment and really fulfilling.
Where will that be streaming? Under what channel?
That will be on twitch.tv/Carrion Comfort Studios. We stream, that show is every Thursday night at 8 p.m. We're going for the next 2 months, I believe. You'll be able to see that.
All right. And where can we buy the Sapphic Space Pirates?
That's available on itch.io. Hold on, I can share the link in chat for everyone who is watching if you give me just a minute. Okay, of course. I should have shared that with you guys in advance. Here it is. If you could share that in chat with me. It's $5 for the virtual edition. Pay what you want above that, but it's just $5. Physical editions, we had them at PAX Unplugged. They were a big hit. I sold out of my entire stock.
Nice.
We're going to have them in stock at PAX East, and hopefully, fingers crossed, there'll be news soon about where you can order a physical version through the mail to have shipped to you. So yeah.
So who is your favorite quirky guest on Yaziva's Bed and Breakfast?
I still think it has to be episode 1. We had Vin Vox VA, who was on my Mask show, also on this channel on Wednesday nights. But Vin came on to play the Jekarin, who is a giant goblinoid crow who like comes down from the roof, and it's just very menacing. And Vin brought that role so much gravitas and introduced the idea that people don't think Gertrude knows how to read, and that's become a huge in-joke, that when people walk, people just assume Gertrude can't read, even though she's a teenage human girl, and that's been a lot of fun.
There's this quote on New Girl where Nick Miller says, "I don't believe I actually know how to read. I just memorized a lot of words." And like, thinking about that, I'm like, but what made me want to memorize them? I was forced into this. I collect so many books, I never read them, but it's about the aesthetic, right?
I have so much time finding time to read right now. It's embarrassing. Right. I feel so bad as an adult that doesn't find enough time to read. Most of my reading lately has been audiobooks whenever I'm taking a trip.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did
like
you
all
know
that time spent in quarantine and you didn't do anything?
The majority of U.S. Americans do not know how to read above an 8th grade reading level.
Wow.
And that 80% of the general public does not read books after they are done with school. So whether it's high school or college, they do not read books. So, a little fun fact for you that's actually not fun or cool.
I think we just automatically decide to stop learning at a certain age, even though we have to like go to high school and college and get a job and learn how to do the job. But I don't think it's something we actually wanted to do. We just had to. So what do you love about GM-less games? Is there anything about GMing games that you prefer over GM-less games?
So as a professional game master, it's very interesting that so much of my attention lately has been into GM-less games. I'm literally working myself out of a job here. Yeah. No, I love that it puts people, there's something I say even in games that I GM, like especially on stream shows, like I try and make a point that this is as much every cast member show as it is my show as the GM. Mm-hmm. And doing the GM-less games like really makes that more apparent. Like they're more invested in the world when they help shape it, when they're the ones who are helping decide what's around the corners, when they're the ones who are surprising their friends with things instead of just having to be the GM who has all the surprises and can't talk to anyone about it. And I also I think it does a lot for consent in gaming, honestly, because there's been so many times in GM-less games where we've had a conversation where it's like, oh, what kind of scene do we want to happen? Like, I'd really love to have like a sweet, tender scene between these two characters. Like, where do we want that to happen? And actually taking the time to like set up the scene beforehand instead of just, oh, it all has to play out naturally and smoothly. I think GM-less games kind of tend more toward that.
Yeah.
And also, as a forever GM, it gives me a chance to take a break. I can kick my feet up, and whenever they meet someone and be like, "What's this guy's name?" I could be like, "I don't know. What's his name?" And,
I'm trying to remember because my brain kind of like had a fog at the beginning. Did I ask you what's in the cup? What do you have in your cup?
You didn't ask me what's in the cup, but it's not blood. It's labeled handfully. My blood cup is off screen, but I'm drinking just some Taylor's of Harrogate Yorkshire Gold with milk and sugar. That's my go-to everyday tea. So yeah.
All right. Well, what is your favorite part of being a GM for hire?
Honestly, it's getting to introduce people who don't normally play games to games. Like a lot of our events that we've been hired for have been like hey, I love tabletop games, but I don't know them well enough to GM them.
Right.
And here are my 5 friends who've never even heard of a tabletop game. Like they've seen Stranger Things, and that's the closest they've gotten. And being able to make those people realize how achievable and approachable and easy it can be. We have, when people book with us, like for D&D sessions, which is what we do a lot of, we have a pre-created list of like basically every class and subclass you could have, and they get those out. And we have like primers for each class that are like, oh, like here's the type of things you can expect to do with this. And like, make sure you notice that you can do this, and like little notes for them so that they feel comfortable playing that character.
Mm-hmm.
And in every table, there's always someone who like kind of is quiet and shy, and you got to kind of coax them along. But there's also always someone who just comes alive, and they're like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. And those moments are so worth it.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. So where do people know to find you as a GM for hire? Like do you have like a website or?
So yeah, you can book with us at charmpersongames.com. We have a little interest form. You can fill that out. Say, this is the game I'm interested in. This is a rough time frame. This is how many players, and we'll reach back out to you and book with you. So yeah, we are very flexible. So if you just let us know like when you're looking at ahead of time, we can set up all those arrangements with you.
Nice. And what are some of your favorite games to GM?
I love doing Monster Hearts. Monster Hearts is a game that's very near and dear to my heart. I love Monster of the Week. I know that Dungeons and Dragons is not the most popular game, but I think that we bring a lot to Dungeons and Dragons, me and my business partner, Stephanie. I think we've joked before that men don't play Dungeons and Dragons right. Like we do a good job of running sessions that are have a good mix of combat that isn't a slog, and puzzles and talking to people, and a good like mix of everything, instead of just we're going to run this thing with 1,000 hit points down to 0 hit points and stand still while we do it.
So I ran one of Jess Markham's like princess games from one of the princess anthology, and she was saying how she has ran that module for so many different groups, and that a group that this was the first time where she had where a group of people decided to like overthrow the government, like the dragon government, rather than fighting the queen. And she was like, and I realized this is my first table where it's all women. And I think that there's just something to be said about all queer tables, all people of color tables, and all women tables that just have a different something than what we have perceived as being the big, like, all white cishet men things that are like the big games. And I think that that's why I was a GM for hire. It's why we run TRPG the way that we do, because it is a completely different experience. And I always say, give the gays what they want. Like the gays want gay D&D, damn it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was also something that was really interesting. So I ran Sapphic Space Pirates at PAX Unplugged. And the way I ran it for Games on Demand, and the way Games on Demand is the first person who comes up to the table gets to pick the game out of like 2 games that are available. And then everyone else, if they want to pick your table, they have to play that game. So I ended up with a lot of like straight men who were playing Sapphic Space Pirates at these tables, and just watching them engage with this game was actually super fun. Like I didn't actually have any problems. There were some people who were like really thoughtful with it. And you could see like realize some things.
That brings me so much joy.
Yeah, I had no like negative interactions coming out of that, which was something I was really afraid of.
So what would you say is like the hardest part of being a GM for hire?
Getting bookings. Honestly, it's hard to find people, and honestly, I kind of agree with it. Finding people that can pay for it, because I really do believe that anyone can GM. I think that we bring extra to it. I think we bring in the easy facilitation of it. I think that we do a good job of, organizing things for events. We will write custom adventures for if you want to do something for like, oh, it's a friend's bachelorette party. We want a D&D adventure just for her. We'll write an adventure that's kind of about your friendship with her and stuff like that. But finding bookings is honestly the hardest part. But everything else is fantastic.
Yeah, that's highly understandable.
Yeah.
So how would you compare running your weekly D&D game, Critical Misses, in person versus online?
So we do Critical Misses, which is a D&D group for women and non-binary people. It is and marginalized genders. We try and be very careful to make sure our table is welcoming. It's basically, the joke we say is it's for not men. So when COVID came, we of course transitioned online, and it was honestly very hard to keep the enthusiasm up. People kind of muting themselves. You don't get that reaction, that sort of shock value when you drop something like a big plot twist in, and you normally get that big gasp when you're all around a table.
Yeah.
And just not getting that feedback has honestly made it much harder as a GM. But you also get all the fun resources that you can do with sharing, shared documents that are easier to do online. So it was a learning curve for us. But I think largely it has been a positive, and I think we've learned a lot of things that now that we're able to start looking at maybe a future we'll be able to get around a table again, maybe being able to take things we learned and transition them to in paper.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you say that most of your games are online? I mean,
now they have been. Yeah, now they kind of have to be. I'm longing for the day when D&D groups are in person again, but we're not there yet. But hopefully soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, and I really appreciate you coming on our show today, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great being here.
Do you have any plugs?
Yeah. Of course I have plugs.
Plugs?
So Sapphic Space Pirates, it's a game about queer community, belonging outside belonging. It is a GM-less, dice-less tabletop role-playing game. It's available. The digital version is available on itch.io. Physical version, stay tuned to our Twitter and hear us out. This coming Wednesday, you can see us here on TRPG. 9 p.m. Eastern time. I forget the Pacific time. You'll have to help me there, Nikki. But the Pacific time for the Masks game, I think in Eastern. I'm sorry. Okay, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern will be the thrilling conclusion of our Masks game, Halcyon Pride, starring the Dawn Brigade. We've had exploding clones and a bank robbery. It's been very fun. Also, we have every Thursday over on Carry and Comfort Studios, you can tune in at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm doing math for Room for Everyone, or Yaziva's Bed and Breakfast actual play. And next Thursday, we'll feature Nikki as the Candle Princess. So yeah, tune in there and see us.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Don't worry about being confused by time zones. I literally call it time travel because it makes zero sense.
I always joke I'm too pretty to do that kind of math.
Right.
But it'd be my job, and so now I have to. So our next guest is for the show has contributed to the Slayer's RPG Almanac project, collaborated with the former Seattle Poet Laureate Claudia Castro Luna, and has been a player and GM on several channels such as All Nerds Here, Hughtopia, Wandering Society, and more. Please welcome storyteller and game designer Angela Limus Mogro. I practiced this and I hope I get it. Mogro Vejo. How'd I do? Mogro.
The funny part is, more people tend to miss the second name and get the first last name wrong. You got the second last name perfect, and the first one, Limus. It's simple.
Limus.
There you go. Perfect. You're good.
I teach phonics.
Oh my God, it's so lovely to be here. Hello there, darlings. Hello there, everyone in chat and such tuning in. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay. I miss your face. Because we used to play in a D&D campaign. That's how we met, and it was a very gay D&D campaign. And Angela basically played the depressed mom friend in a way. It's just like I had to protect my small little baby.
We didn't, but the funny part was that we didn't realize how small you were until like the second session.
Oh, that's right.
Because then you realize, oh wait, no, because of how I described her background, she's 4 feet, she's like 3-4 feet shorter than we originally thought.
Yeah, and so she was, and I love playing Cracosmia because she's just all of my neurodivergent feminine side rolled into a little character. But she's a tiefling halfling. So, because like tieflings are half something else, so I was like, please let me play her as a halfling tiefling. So she's small instead of medium sized, and of course Ellis said yes because Ellis doesn't really tell me no.
It's Nikki. A lot of us don't really say no.
Especially when it's like extra, like I don't know, when it's cute. Ellis is like, yes, absolutely, do it. So we talk with our, well, first, what's in your cup? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Myers lemon related tea because my two favorite approaches to my tea drinking should either be A, period cramps treatment tea because I need them now, and thanks hormones, you bring me so many delightful things. Cramps were not one that I wanted, but here we are, so that's one. Or two, I will describe it as poetically and as absurdly as I can. I want it filled with so much citrus that even the thought of scurvy begins to run away, like at the speed of light.
Amazing. Estrogen was like, well, if you want boobs, you're gonna have to deal with this too.
No, why? No, don't do this.
Estrogen is an asshole. I'm sorry.
It is, because it's like you have boobs now. Yay! Also, they hurt.
Yeah.
No.
So how did you get into TTRPGs?
So I had a very odd kind of journey with going into TTRPGs because my initial starting point felt very different from a lot of folks in that I had a very terrible first two experiences with TTRPGs, where my first one was, I think, getting involved with a 4th edition D&D game where I was like, no, I can't do this. I know I am a nerd and a weirdo. I am not this specific flavor of nerd weirdo. I cannot internalize this with my own self-conception.
Yeah.
But also I saw that they had crystalline people called Shardmind, and I'm like, but they're so pretty and I want to be glowy and pink.
Amazing.
Not trans at that point. No, never been trans. No sign of queerness or transness whatsoever. None. And then my other experience was also with the same group of terrible best friends, and by which I mean the best friends who you leave high school and you're like, you're terrible people. You're actually not good people. No, we're not friends anymore.
Was the only thing that kept us together.
Yep.
And my only other experience up until a certain point was like a Star Wars RPG where I remember my friends specifically gave me equipment that was unlikely to hit like its actual parameters. Like they statted me badly on purpose. But that session was memorable to me because the first thing that happened was I crit on my weapon and I took out a droid, and the person who was an asshole in the group tried and picked a bounty hunter who's like, I'm a Boba Fett stand-in, immediately crashed into the ceiling because his jetpack malfunctioned. And I was like, there may be a god. There may in fact be a god who likes me very much. So that was my first jump into it.
Yeah, I think that's relatable to a lot of marginalized people, like they're, as we've seen on the current, trend on Twitter right now in TTRPG. But what is interesting to me is like my power fantasy is not like making other people smaller so that I can feel big. Like my power fantasy is like I get to be gay with my friends, and like you know, maybe we fight a monster sometimes, but maybe the real monster was capitalism the whole time. Like that.
Yes.
That's so like to hear of people who are like railroading GMs and things like that. Like I've done some railroading if I'm in a one shot, but like the people who like their power fantasy is making their friends suffer just does not make sense to me.
I didn't quite get it until I realized just they were just terrible people in general. So that explained a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it was also a case where like I didn't really want to be involved with that kind of stuff. And then like I did sort of get pulled into some stuff because I saw, I think it was like a Shadow of Mordor tie-in that folks from CR were doing for Critical Role, for those who don't know about it, what CR means. And I was like, I was intrigued, not because necessarily of the game aspect, but I was intrigued by the theatrical components because I was someone for whom I had a lot of interest in theater and like drama when I was younger. But one, the department head had favoritism, like blatant favoritism. And two, I remember like comments from my friends at the time. I'm going to just imagine giant air quotes around the term friends telling me that like, well, it's the play Hairspray and it's a big cast and they can't be all white people. So like, you're obviously going to get involved in this. And I'm like, this became like 6 times more insulting than you thought it would be.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of, that was a lot of my experience. So getting like a space to be more theatrical or more dramatic, or just at the end of the day, just very creative was enjoyable. And a lot of that came from that, watching those shows and wanting to play it myself. And also my partner, who is also a game designer, Moss Bosch, who's created things like This Party Sucks, which is a very, one, perfect title for a game, and two, is very much their style of like very GM-less, very much like feelsy gay trans vibes. Like you're specifically playing a gay trans person who is going to a party after a terrible breakup and is like trying to get through these awkward situations, but who the game design is such that they will always end up in a better place than when they started. And I'm like, this is cool. I kind of want to see what else is here. Then two years of me being involved with like 5e for a while on different stream capacities. Like I never really played games at home except for like one game that after like 4 or 5 sessions I took over for my partner and our friend group from college. And then the rest of my time has primarily been streamed games where I was usually the GM for 5e or a few other systems that over time I got involved in and found just more interesting stuff than what 5e had to offer in terms of genre, storytelling, and just the kinds of ways people wanted to be involved with different themes, emotions, and really just play around the creative space. My kind of journey's just been really weird, and I'm just like, I constantly feel like that meme of John Travolta with the jacket just walking into a space and just sort of being like,
what is this?
Okay.
What's happening here?
All right.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to be here for a while.
I can relate to like the weird roundabout way of getting into these things because I got into art TTRPGs because I love like fantasy and sci-fi and stuff. I'm a giant geek, of course. And then I got invited to be a professional GM, so I did that for a while. And the reason I started streaming was to like kind of advertise my wares in a way of like, hey, hire me because look what I can do. And then realize like I much prefer streaming over being a professional GM. I get to be really picky about who I play with. I get to get my acting chops out, like I need to act out. And it's so much fun. I love playing characters. So speaking of role playing, because role playing is I think the most fun part of TTRPGs. Do you have like a favorite in-game romance moment in a TTRPG? And if not, what is your dream scenario for that?
Okay. So I've had a few of these. They all line up for different reasons. It's weird that I have a few of these because I don't ever actually try and seek out romance as much. I didn't used to until recently, where I was like, I really want this to be an intentional thing now, where In a home game of Monster Hearts, I'm playing. I think it was. I was not a ghoul. No, I'm playing a witch character. So for folks who aren't familiar with Monster Hearts, witch has a lot of elements of like being able to like hex people to cause things to go wrong with them. And I wanted to do classic Zatanna style hexes, which are just me saying the words backwards to curse people. And there was this really tender moment between my character, who's like an adopted, like like mixed race person who was having a lot of feelings about connecting to a history of witchcraft that she had never known about. And then one of the other players was effectively an egg. That's kind of one of those terms we throw around in the trans community of like someone who's like just coming out of their shell about transness and is like, no, that's not me, that's me. Okay, maybe it is. And it just had this very sweet, like tender, like I think a few Ace friends joke about this refer to as like profane, like hand holding or like filthy hand holding kind of moment of just like sometimes the most like intimate, occasionally erotic, but not necessarily as such moments are just those very sweet ones because where like folks just get to be tender and soft with one another. Because like queer folks deserve the ability to talk about sex, sexuality, intimacy, eroticism way more than we do. And we shouldn't have to always be perfect. That's just a standby of all our beliefs. We don't have to be squeaky clean in order to still deserve validity, rights, any of these other things. Political sidebar. That will happen a lot with me. But sometimes, like, I really love those moments where folks like are like, oh yeah, like I'm a bi disaster. I could like I don't have to have any shame about like sleeping with multiple people. There's no shame in any of that. And then sometimes you're like, I just want a moment of sitting down with someone with the sweetest, softest little kiss to know that someone else in the world acknowledges me in that moment right there with all of the affection, joy, and love that I could possibly give them. So that's one with me as a player, and that's also tied with the moment with Momo from our Thirsty Sword Lesbians one shot, where I was just like, we're in the middle of getting the hell out of a ship. I don't know what's happening. Their character's panicking, and I'm just like, I kiss her. It's like I'm not the kind of person to do this, although my 3 partners would probably tell me otherwise. But just going for that kind of moment where it's just like you get stuck in your own head half the time, and sometimes you just need the ability to go, yeah, go for it. And then there's the time in home game 5e where after they survived, they beat a god, which is they got high enough level to beat a god, which was already a thing. I was like, Jesus. The whole party chipped in to help create a wedding between that character and her girlfriend.
Aww.
Like the druid created a whole bunch of things and brought stuff from the Feywild. The paladin, like before he left on his own journey, just left a personalized pair of daggers for them both to have that symbolizes their unity together as people. It was just so sweet. And I was just like, this was a throwaway NPC from level 10. And now they're level 20 and they're getting married. And I'm like, this is great. 2.5 years of working on this campaign was worth it for this alone.
Well, I knew you were a fan of romance when you had that character whose name I have now forgotten. What was the Thembo character's name from when I was Crocosmia?
Oh,
What was it?
Oh, I don't remember who it was.
Oh God!
Oh, you mean the one that I kept trying to set up
You did set her
with.
up. So
oh, right.
You knew that Crocosmia loved books, and so you gave them a book and said, "Hey, you should go deliver this."
I know not of what you speak of being done with any intent behind it. I merely facilitated a situation that should have happened faster. Get to it.
But that was one of my favorite, like, small moments, though, because then it turned into her sitting on their shoulders with her book out on their horns, reading out loud to them, which I just thought was a very sweet, like, small romance moment. But yeah, I think that, like, I think that's probably one of the most fun things is that whole, like, RPing romance with other queer people and how sweet and soft and fun it can be. And like, I don't know, it's just always fun. So we're gonna like kind of switch gears a little bit. Could you tell us about Art for Ourselves? How did you get involved, and why you continue to be involved?
So Art for Ourselves, we've had a bit of a break since all the whole Panini has been going on. Just I think a lot of us have moved on to different projects, or we've just had a lot of difficulties keeping in touch with one another. But a lot of the outset of that was me becoming involved was a friend of mine from undergrad going, hey, a couple of us from Oakland are kind of involved in this thing that we want to have like QTPOC creatives writing articles and hopefully getting paid for it, and maybe in the future doing workshops and stuff around it. And I was like, okay, I don't have a job. I'm in SoCal after about a year of getting punted around the Bay Area trying to find a place to live. I'm trying to figure out what are we going to do for the future. Sure. And I ended up becoming involved with that as a way of me just thinking about I guess to get into more like serious kind of heavy topics, like a lot of assault and like intimate partner violence that was happening specifically in like organizing communities, because I was coming from having left undergrad where I was heavily involved with a lot of student organizing that was there and trying to stay involved in community issues in either the Bay Area or other spaces. I was just moving through as basically not homeless, but definitely actually homeless, like couch surfer. And the first piece I wrote for them was basically me going, I need to talk about this. I don't think this is going to be a perfect article or like 40, 60, 100-page dissertation breaking down exactly what are all the steps we need to do to go forward. But I need to get out what my thoughts are about this, because something doesn't feel right when we keep pushing so many people out of the space in a way that they consistently just become the canaries in the coal mine effect for everyone else. But worse, because at least the canaries in the coal mine, you're like, they have a fraction of an interest in the well-being after they get used. For a lot of folks I was talking to, it was especially a lot of women of color, a lot of queer and trans folk of color who were really trying to get support from their communities, and a lot of them were kind of just treating it like, well, you caused this fuss and caused these schisms, or you caused this fuss, and did you really have evidence? Was it really that bad? And that's that kind of element, that was it really that bad, that helps facilitate what Toni Morrison is a really fantastic African-American writer, had this quote, this particular piece she delivered. It was a speech, I think, for like a literature conference, where she referred to it as the unspeakable. And that to me is what a lot of that often comes back to in a lot of spaces, both specific to TTRPG and organizing and beyond. And for me, that was sort of my first foray into that. And also just starting to talk about politics, starting to talk about relationships, starting to get involved in a lot of issues around trauma, sexuality, trans folk in the military. It really kind of springboarded me moving into a lot of other like roles that involved writing as the main focus. And that's kind of what started pulling me into more creative work again, is instead of just being like, well, poems are kind of a thing that I do sometimes, or I have a lot of thoughts that I put out in a note format on Facebook every now and then. It started turning into something that I wanted to make more long term.
Yeah. What is it like hosting a podcast with your partner?
It is an exercise in us continually going back and forth to one another, going, "On, we have to record something." It is a lot of that. It is a lot of that. And it's also a lot of realizing that oftentimes the end to our podcast, regardless of the subject, so long as it relates to relationships, ends up going back to a few core things. And one of the chief among them is just talk to one another. Because people, what I found, and this is very much a case where I think we've asked a bunch of times throughout different podcast episodes, are the straights okay? And the
Right.
answer is always no.
Oh.
The answer is always no. But I'm always curious as to like why specifically that is, because for a podcast, it's my partner who is non-binary, transmasc white person, and myself, I am Latina trans woman who also talks very openly about being disabled because I deal with a lot of issues around mental health, specifically around like PTSD, depression, anxiety, maybe ADHD. I don't know. But the fun thing about mental health problems is that when you have several of them, all the symptoms overlap after a while, and you can't tell them apart. It's great.
That was me getting my ADHD diagnosis because so many of my issues are sensory related. So it was like, do I have ADHD or am I autistic and have PTSD? Because I do have PTSD. I've been diagnosed as having PTSD, and it's ADHD. It's ADHD with trauma, and that gave me all of these, like, I have a lot of sensory issues and all these different things, but like none of the social difficulties or just like the very stereotypical autism diagnosis parameters. And so I just say neurodivergent because I'm like, we're learning so much about autism and ADHD and how they overlap and how it's not about social aspects and all these different things. And so it's just like, I'm just going to call myself neurodivergent and call it good. Stimulants work on me. That's my diagnosis. Like,
yeah, my favorite way of thinking of it is that it's like it's equivalent for me. Like talking about mental health stuff is equivalent to when I talk about my sexuality. Because if people ask me, "What are you?" I'm like, "Bi."
Yeah.
And that's the shorthand. And there's like an asterisk next to it. And I have to like pull back the like 12 pages of scroll writing that are like, I mean, technically, if I wanted to be reclamatory, I would choose the term like bi dyke, but I realize that that's not always a term that people are always fond of hearing. But I do tend to work more with lesbian, but it's also a very specific kind of lesbianism because I don't want to be associated anyway with TERFs, but associating lesbiandom solely with TERFs is terrible, and people should stop doing that because a lot of bi communities overlap actually a lot with lesbian and trans communities at one point. And then also, it's not that I don't like men, it's that they make it hard to like them. Yeah. There's a difference.
I saw a guy on TikTok that was like, I'm a bisexual man, which means that I like all of the things about women, and despite all of the things about men, I find them attractive.
Yeah.
And I always say sapphic bi because I have realized like I went like a full circle. I came out as a lesbian and I got divorced, and it was like this big whole thing, but then recently realized like, oh no, I'm actually like, I'm a sapphic bi. Like, I prefer relationships with women, but I do find men attractive. And so it's a whole thing. Like you're right, it's like a scroll. Like you have to like well, if I have to qualify it, and all these things are so complicated, but I think that having labels for things has been really helpful because then you realize like, oh, I'm not broken or weird. Like there are other people like me, or there's a community for me to reach out to. So yeah.
It's a lot of that, and it's also a lot of where, and I don't actually necessarily think I've heard some folks refer to this as a very like young person focused thing, but I do think it's happened through a lot of various generations. Mainly because I don't like throwing shade at people if it's not hitting everyone. It should hit everyone. It should apply to. Don't be small focused when you throw shade. It must cast far. And the shadow should engulf many people. It's a case where I found at times, and this is especially true with me with words being primarily the medium in which I work in, identities, folks will oftentimes treat those as points of limitation. They'll use identity terms as a way of demarcating the boundary of a space. And I think that is in some ways the correct way to look at it, but I don't like thinking, I have a very different perspective on boundaries, which is to say that if you're making a space here, it's about how we make a space of potential, of possibility. If we say lesbian means this, then it's like, oh, how many things could be included in that? That's my immediate response to that. Not, okay, lesbian means this. That means all of you motherfuckers get out of here now. We don't like any of you. I'm like, do realize this is never going to end well, right? Like I understand why people want certain boundaries. Those are very real things because as happens a lot with especially like racialized kind of language, especially when folks are let's be honest, stealing from Black Twitter half of the time for like social
Yeah.
language.
Mhm.
It's one of those where you're like, people use words a certain way because it has a very particular contextual meaning to it.
Yeah.
And it's not that words can't change meaning, but you should always understand who is having the power to do so, and in doing so, who is it taking power away from.
Right.
And that's the responsibility of all writers to be mindful of that. Otherwise, you're not doing your job right.
Yeah. Well, and I also think like boundaries could be like a rubber band, right? Like you create your boundary and then it expands, and maybe someday it expands so much that it pops, like the rubber band breaks, and you realize like, oh, that label, like that label doesn't work for me because it's expanded too many times, or there's just so many random weird things. But tell us about your new game, and then we'll bring Natalie back on as a whole and have a chat as a whole group.
Yes. I am super excited about this because as of today, it's less than 2 weeks than the launch date of when I actually get the fund up and running for it. So I have primarily in the space the past year or so been working mostly with playbooks for the Slayers RPG, or just kind of coming up with stuff homebrew that I'd share in games all the time for things like 5e or other games. This is the first time that I've ever actually written my own game that is in a way kind of a hack, but is also very much my own thing, called Flame in the Abyss. It is a 3-person GM-less game that is about navigating loss, memory, and grief, where you, instead of playing 3 different characters, you're all playing 3 emotional aspects and perspectives of one character who is essentially in a place called the Abyss, where memories become fractured and emotions come alive. And the only way to get out of it is to confront the loss that you've recently suffered that got you there in the first place. And this is pulling from a lot of different other games, in particular Quinby Rodriguez's Your Sister's Drowned Laertes, which is a fantastic game I recommend folks look at for basically being a super good deconstruction of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl idea. It's so good in how it does that. More games should be built off of that. Connie Chang's Halo and Horns, which is
So
hilarious
fun.
game. It's
We
a
had
hilarious
one shot
game.
of that recently, and it's so fun to watch.
It's so fun to watch, and Connie has a good eye for how to apply a game design mind to streaming context, which more games should try and do if they want to be involved in stream stuff more easily. And also a lot of it is pulled from my biggest ongoing love as a kid, video game wise, which is Final Fantasy. That and like Kingdom Hearts are 2 of my like series growing up where I was like, I'm gonna be home here forever. No one's ever gonna take this from me. These are my comfort games. And because the whole concept Flame in the Abyss is a thing mentioned in aspects of the FF14 story. And for me, I wanted to highlight that kind of imagery and symbolism of like, what does it mean to be like a little like matchstick in the midst of heavy darkness? And not because darkness is bad. I wanted to be intentional, not make darkness be a stand-in for evil, because God knows how many people do that, and God knows it's boring. It's been overdone. It's like evil, corrupting black shadow thing coming over and about to take your soul. I'm like, hi, friend. You want to go get coffee or something? You're much more interesting to me than
As a person who's reading
dude.
A Wrinkle in Time to her students right now, I feel so called out.
I'm not gonna judge. I'm not gonna judge. You do what you feel is best. But a lot of this game at the core is about wanting to answer how do you hold on to grief in something very terrible and then let it go once you give it some time to process. And it's a really hard thing, because I think a lot of games, like even ones I love like Monster Hearts, can in practice revel in this idea to become like trauma porn, where it's sort of like, how do we make the worst backstory for this person to become messes? And I know that's not how everyone plays, but sometimes folks can lean into in the story making, even in a lot of queer spaces, to if not by intention, at least by implication, become about the tragedy of these stories, even while we're being like gay messes. Because we have a lot of sadness, we have a lot of loss and tragedy in our communities. So I wanted to try and create a game that was about you going through this process of something really big, like you lost a family member, you had to cut out a friend from your life, a loved one died, or you left a religion. These are all big things that throughout our lives start becoming more commonplace. And it becomes those kind of things we can feel stuck in. And I wanted to try and create a game about let's go through that, but then let you move on from it once we're comfortable and ready to just depart from that space.
I feel like this would work so well for therapy. Like, because they are using TTRPGs in therapy more often now, and I can imagine, like, especially couples who go through loss together. Because you see a lot of families when they lose a child, the parents sometimes don't make it through their marriage. And I think, like, I know that it's also meant to be, like, for, with your lens on, like, being queer, but, like, I can see so many technical applications for it as well that I think I can't wait to read it and have it break my heart and find the right team to play it on stream and put up a physical content warning on the screen like this might make you cry. If you don't want to cry, don't watch this. And I have some people in mind, like Christiana is one of my favorite people to watch cry on stream because she just is such a great actress. I mean that with all love. Like, she's such a good actress that she'll make everyone else cry as well. She's also like just the sweetest angel of a person. So like, yeah, I really want to have her play that game. And I think it'll be really fun experiment. Yeah, and I'm thinking pre-recorded, so then if it's too heavy, we don't stream it.
We're all crying, and we all need like 6 pints of ice cream and like 2 cups of tea and like a chocolate bar after this.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring Natalie back on, and let me get this over. There we go. Now we have everybody on screen together.
Hi.
So, Reese, do you want to ask your question about the Twitter trend?
Yeah, this will be a fun one for each of you to answer. According to a trending Twitter topic, what weapon do you associate yourself with?
That's
I can give you a think.
I've actually been taking German longsword classes, so that is near and dear to my heart right now. So I think I'm just gonna go with a classic longsword here.
Hey,
oh, do you want to show off your sword? Because I know
it's
always,
upstairs.
Always
I should have grabbed it. No, usually it's behind me, but today it's not.
Oh no! How dare!
I know.
How dare!
Sword-related faux pas, we might say.
Yeah.
But that is a hard one because I had someone tell me recently, because I posted it on my Twitter, that I was like, hey, what weapon would you associate me with? And I have someone who I work in a podcast with over on Creme Demented say halberd, and I was like, ooh, like a spear or a really like long staff weapon sounds really cool, because my favorite like class in video games is dragoons, because the idea of like, what are you? What is your solution to everything? I jump really fucking high and I hit it with a spear. Either it will die or I will break all of my bones, but one of us is not living through this. So I love the idea of like a spear or like polearm kind of weapon. But I also love paladins so much in terms of like if you didn't do terrible like crusader elements of it and just someone who's like fully devoted to a cause to the end of their life. I love the sword and shield just combo so much. It's just such a classic, and I grew up with Legend of Zelda games too, so I was like, I don't mind being Link, just taller and more, well, I can't say more trans, because Link's probably we're all of the community just fighting within
Link memes. I love them.
Trans Link memes is
and trans Zelda memes as well. I'll have to send that to you. So for me, I'm on the same page with like the polearm style. Like I said, glaive. Because I like the idea that I could hit somebody with the non-bladed side and knock them out. So I could choose to not be like hit somebody with a deadly weapon. Or if they like deserve it, I can choose to take their head off. Like it's So and I feel like it's probably such a mom friend thing to be like, I will like tell you when you're being a little shit, but also if somebody messes with you, I'm gonna take their head off. So that's why I always like lean towards glaive for sure. What about you, Reese?
Hmm. I'm thinking a sword as well. Like, I've definitely been in some internal rage in my mind and really thinking I just want to cut a bitch. Then you don't have to get too close because swords are long. Because at first, when I like was thinking of my first D&D character, I was like trying to make up this weapon in my mind. I couldn't think of the name for it, like, and it's so hard to like Google it, being like, what knives that go like between your knuckles so you can like punch stab somebody. That was like the first one that
is a thing.
Yeah. And I couldn't like remember the word for it, but then when I used it in combat, I got like really scared because like I was way too close to the dragon. So like I need like a sword to give me like at least over a foot distance.
Everyone feels like a boss until they go up against a dragon,
right?
And see who's the actual boss.
I'm gonna find this weapon.
Yeah, like I just can't remember what it was called.
It's definitely a type of dagger. And I thought of like magic.
But it's kind of like having like brass knuckles, but with knives on it.
Yeah. Oh, so that's our silly violence question. Did y'all have questions for each other?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about so the podcast you do with your wife. I haven't had a chance to hear it, or your partner. I haven't had a chance to hear it yet. Angela, can you tell us more about it?
It's basically about 45-minute to hour 15 kind of long segments where we just kind of go into a topic for one another. It originally started as us just being like, we are long distance, living away from each other, and we're going to do a podcast together because apparently that's what you do when you live far away from one another and you miss each other and are really gay. And so we started off with that, and then we continued it on with just wanting to talk about a bunch of different things that really our friends had been like, you two should talk about relationships together because you have such like a solid relationship. Because funnily enough, the day that I asked them to be my partner and all that, with the way that time worked out, their birthday is the 6-month mark of each part of our relationship. Because we got together September 29th. So March 29th will be another 6-month increment. And this 29th, which is in 2 days, which is still weird for me to say and think about, it will be 10 and a half years together.
Wow.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
And we're also polyamorous. My partner has had someone long-term for a period of time. I've gotten with someone in the midst of the pandemic, and then someone else who I got involved with, who I was dating previously. And we've talked very openly about those kinds of elements with one another, because I think a lot of people have assumed that a lot of what polyamory entails is just like a lot of sleeping around with more people. And the joke response I give to them is just, no, it's just a lot of Google calendars, just a lot of coordinating that. And really, it's more just actually like, are you giving attention to each other? Are you listening to what each other needs? Are you talking to one another? Not just waiting to talk, like listening to one another and being open and honest about where you're at, and especially about jealousy. We have a whole episode, and I have a piece I wrote for ourselves specifically about like jealousy and intimacy and polyamory. And we have like a little nugget I'll leave you with to get interest in that episode is, and that piece is, I say, we never operate with the assumption that we're going to be together forever. We just, because we both, I think, feel this sense that if we love each other, we want it to be an intentional thing. If we want to be together and ends up being for forever, that's great. But we recognize we both grow as people. And we probably wouldn't have gotten together with the same people who we were at 18. And thank God, because we were both very different.
For sure.
So yeah, it's a lot of just me and my partner effusing gaily at one another and talking about very tender, difficult things.
Yeah. Can't relate. I'm firmly on the die alone, be eaten by my cats plan. So we're working on that.
That's the life I'm living.
Look, some people can get like 6 or 7 people. Some people can get 0. Some people could, I guess, murder other people and that would give you a negative. I guess that I don't know how that would balance it out, but I know there's some involvement of that. I'm sure.
Can't trust myself to be in a relationship because I thought about murder too much.
Natalie, you said something about crows earlier. What was that?
I was talking about the Jekarin within Yaziva's bed and breakfast, the character of the Jekarin, which is one of my favorite guests that can come visit the bed and breakfast.
I love ravens. I love ravens because association with death, and I love birds because I immediately go to Phoenix, and Phoenix is my favorite mythological creature because everything about it is gorgeous. Symbolism, original stories, meaning, and it's a fucking bird who's red, orange, yellow, and is on fire, and is literally dies.
Reminds me of a phoenix
and comes back from the ashes. There is nothing cooler to me than a bird that just like, I died. Haha, no, I didn't. That's cute.
I am like so anti-bird. This is like making me cringe knowing that you love them so much. We have like these murder crows in Seattle that will literally like chase you down. Like our mailman would get chased by these same crows like during mating season. It's crazy. I feel like so bad
because they will remember.
He must have
children.
Yeah, but I didn't even do anything wrong, and I had this crow that used to come up to my bedroom window every morning and just squawk in my ear and fly away.
Just like, wake up, bitch.
Yeah.
I also like I have a thing about birds as well. Like they freak me out a little bit. It's weird. But I'm fully aware that I'm wrong because birds are cool. I do like that we can hear them now. Like it's spring in the Seattle area.
Yeah.
It's like I can hear the frogs chirping and the birds. But one of my favorite things that D20 did was Dimension 20 did was have a half Phoenix character who was her like she raised an NPC and then that NPC had to raise her when she like came back for her next cycle. It's so cute. It's from the and it's spoilers, so sorry, but it's from the 2nd season of their Fantasy High show. But it was just such a like Brennan Lee Mulligan can like go from talking like making blowjob jokes to like just having the most tender, sweet moments that make you cry. And so yeah, that's also what I think of whenever I see Phoenix is thinking of Ada Egfort. But
I had a question for Natalie. This is this may be a bold assumption to think that you are of the queer persuasion.
I am. Yeah. They don't let you get haircuts like this if you're straight.
Some of them do. They're encroaching on our territory, and it's starting. It's like you gotta be like they're like poachers. You gotta watch out for them every. But I'm curious. Because I know different folks, for when they think about their games, might have different audiences in mind and such. Do you ever feel like, because you chose a very specific name for the game, Sapphic Space Pirates. It's not hiding what it is. Do you feel like anything, or like, do you ever have thoughts about what it means to be accessible when thinking about your games? And if so, like, does that feel like it's in relation to like the audiences you're trying to be like more catering towards, or do you just start more and focus on, I make what I want, I like what we as a team want to do, or is it usually you try and make it like we want like a casual sort of audience, or like everyone to be able to play this versus like we make this for the gays kind of thing, which is both are valid, but I'm kind of curious, like what's your mindset around that?
So that's actually a really good question when it comes to Sapphic Space Pirates, because Sapphic Space Pirates started off as a game that had bounced around in my head forever. It started off as a PBTA game that was a lot more combat focused, because I was trying to make a game for everyone. Like I knew that when I played it with my friends, it would be us, having gay little adventures and telling stories about lesbians on spaceships. But I figured like, oh, I'll make this game for anyone and anyone can tell the kind of stories they want, but it will really be for me. And I think the Thirsty Sword Lesbians, what it did was it showed everyone that no, there's a market for making a game that is for certain people. That is, this game isn't for everyone. This game is for me. So when I made Sapphic Space Pirates, that was really what gave really pushed my creative urge on this game, was because it made me realize that no, I can just make a game that is for me and my friends to have our gay little adventures, because there's probably a lot of other people who want to do that, who want to play what it feels like to be part of a queer community and a queer group in a world that they're a part of but not fully a part of. And that was really the trigger that really made the whole game come together. So yeah, I don't think it was a sense of me just making the game, oh, this is what I want to make, so I'll make it and people can buy it or shut up. I think it was a game where it was, this is a game I wish someone else made, and I really want to see myself in it, because I like Thirsty Sword Lesbians. It's a game with a lot of heart, and like I think it does romance and like sort of like that sort of queer first kiss moment really well. But what I don't think it does as well is what queer people are like as a community, like what it's like to be friends with other lesbians, or to be in a group of queer sapphic women and to have that sort of camaraderie. And that was the game I was trying to build with Sapphic Space Pirates. So yeah.
Found family. I love family stories.
Yes,
I feel like
very
Sapphic
much.
Space Pirates really does found family well.
Yeah, it's got a lot of the stereotypes you see in the community, like the hotshot who is the lesbian fuckboy, and the veteran who's the old crusty lesbian who's been around forever, and the fresh face who is the brand new baby dyke who this is all new and exciting for, and trying to touch all of those different things and say what it's like for all these people to be friends and be a community together and maybe find romance.
That's awesome. Well, we've been streaming for more than an hour.
Yeah.
We usually like to keep this as a tight hour so that our guests can go about their days, because we know you are so busy. So I'm going to, is there anything that you didn't get to plug that you definitely, you're kicking myself because I forgot to plug this, or are you good?
I'm good.
I can plug my stuff real quick. I'll do the thing.
Perfect. Do the thing.
All right. So if you want to catch my poetry writings and creature and other miscellaneous game designs, you can find my Patreon over at Philosophem. That's one. If you want to find my chapbooks, you want to find my poetry chapbooks and all of the 20 playbooks I created for the Slayers RPG, they're over on itch.io at Voice of the Phoenix. If you want to catch Flame in the Abyss, that will hopefully getting the fund out, not this upcoming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, it will likely be posted there on its own page as well, from tiers of starting at $7 all the way to $20, which the $20 gets you, in addition to a physical copy, a mobile copy, a print and play copy, and the full color version of it, an original song that I have recorded, edited, and created specifically for this game called Pyre, that if anyone happened to catch the +1 experience debut of the game itself as well, the song can be found over there, over on YouTube at +1 XP channel. I'm there, and if you have the space and time and want to go see some other folks who are my compatriots in the work that I do, go check out All Nerds Here on Wednesdays. They just started a new Masks game, and our season just kicked off, and they are awesome. And I will probably be writing the theme for them as well soon. Over the next 3 or 4 days, I got 12 hours to write a thing. This is going to be fun. Always working. And that's a lot of the stuff you can find me. And I believe Nikki has been so kind enough to include my stuff on there as well. That's pretty much everything. I'm also a freelance musician if you want to find me at my email, which is angela.lemusmokerbeho22@gmail.com. I do nice work. I do good things. I make feelsy jazz and lo-fi kind of stuff, and occasionally blues and rocky stuff. So
Nice.
I do a lot of things. Every
Yeah.
time I get to this bit, I realize I have too much shit that I do.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna bring just me and Reese back. All right, so Reese, do you have anything upcoming that you would like to plug? And then I'll talk about all of our upcoming shows, because holy moly, we've got a lot going on.
Nothing upcoming, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you miss an episode, you can go back and hang out with us there. You can also join us in the party on Discord.
Is the Discord link gonna work? Probably not. Nightbot has not been letting me do the Discord one, but that's okay. So what do we have going on?
And make sure that if you would like to enjoy some tea, you can go to fridaytea.com, and you can use the promo code TRPG for 15% off.
Awesome. Okay, so what do we have coming up? All right, so we have this show all the time, 2 p.m. Every last Sunday of the month, unless something else goes on, we might pre-record things. There's a lot of moving parts to this. There's some people I want to have on coming up soon that are in weird time. Well, not weird. They're in their own time zone, and they're different time zones than ours. And so it's been an interesting scheduling thing. Wednesdays, so we have our finale of Halcyon Pride, our Masks game that Natalie is running. And that is on Wednesday at 6 p.m. On the second and third Saturday of the months up through May, we have Age of Wonder, which is also a masks game. I did not mean to schedule 2 masks games at the same time, but the gays love masks, and so it happened. So we will be switching back and forth between Age of Wonder and Avatar Reclamation on Saturdays, so definitely check that out. Reese is going to join us on Masks in May, so that's going to be a blast. And we also have Austin, who is Sailor Scout Austin, who will be joining us as a guest for those 2 episodes in May. Coming up in April, if you are a fan of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, we have The Beaten and the Damned, which is going to be run by our own Kelsey, and that is a demigods game where everyone have like their special parent from the Percy Jackson universe, and we're really excited. Can't wait to announce that cast, which that cast announcement will come out this week after session 0. So definitely make sure that you are following us here and on Twitter to check out all of the cool stuff that we are doing, and make sure that you follow me and Reese as well. I do all of the casting, so if you're interested in being on one of our shows, make sure you reach out, join our Discord, because that's where I will post casting calls. So yeah, thanks everybody.
And also, if you know anybody that would like to be a musical guest on our show, definitely put that out there, because we have had musical guests on our show in the past, and it's really fun. So I'd love to see that in some future shows.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, everybody.
Bye.